Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and I make videos about books, writing and every random things that leave rent-free in my neurodivergent brain. Today I'm so excited to be talking about the Asian Readathon that is organized by Cindy from the channel With Cindy. In short, this is a 1-month reading marathon where we will be reading a bunch of books from Asian authors. I think it's just an amazing opportunity to discover new writers, new body of works, discover new cultures as well, and just expand our reading horizons. I'm so excited about this. I don't know if I mentioned it already in a previous video. Basically, I hold a bachelor degree in South Asian studies. So I did study Hindi and I used to read a lot of South Asian literature. In recent years I kind of fell off of it, but I have wanted to get back into it for a while, so I think this is a very good opportunity. So I'm very thankful for Cindy for organizing this. I'll structure this video in 3 parts. The first one I'll just go quickly through the logistics, but you will find all the information in the description below. Next, I will talk about the books I've decided to pick for this challenge and that I'm aiming to read during the month of May. And then finally, I'll share some recommendations of books that I personally enjoyed and found really interesting from a variety of Asian authors. In terms of logistics, as I mentioned, this is a 1-month reading challenge where we are going to focus on Asian authors. What we mean by Asian is very broad, and in the resources that I will link below, there is a whole list of what is included. It's really wide and broad, so I think you will have no problem finding new authors and exciting works to read. So there are a few prompts in this channel to help you decide which books you should read. You are allowed to combine those different prompts, but for each book that you read, that should be from an author from a different ethnicity. So there are 5 prompts and I'm gonna be reading from my notes. So the first one is read a book written by an Asian author. That's basically a gift because you read one book, you have this prompt and you can combine it with any of the other prompts. The second one is read a book that feels timeless. The third one is read an underrated book. 4, read a debut book. 5, read a book with a story, character or world that represents what you would want in your next life. Basically, it's very open and you can interpret those prompts in any way that you like. So for example, the debut prompt, it can mean reading a debut book from an author, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be super recent. It can also mean that it's the first book from this author that you're reading, if you want to interpret it that way. So basically the whole goal of this readathon is to be very easy and accessible for everyone to join, but to also put the spotlight on underrepresented authors and in particular putting the spotlight on Asian authors. There's going to be a lot of super helpful information and useful resources below. I think Cindy and her community have done an amazing work compiling a list of book recommendations and all of that. Moving on to the books I'm planning to read for this challenge. For me, it's going to be a mix from books I already have on my bookshelves and new books that have been on my TBR for a very long time, and it's just the perfect excuse for me to get to those books as well. I've already spent literally hours browsing the different lists that I compiled and looking through my bookshelves. I have a good pile of books from Asian authors that I need to get to. I'm also gonna get a few new books because I can't help it, I have no shelf control and this is just a great excuse to buy more books. But you don't have to. You can look at what you have on your shelves, you can borrow books from your library, you can listen to audiobooks, things like that. So you don't have to buy more books, I just can't help it. Don't be like me. So for the first prompt, read a book by an Asian author, which is basically any book by an Asian author, so it's very open. I'm planning to read Scattered All Over the Earth from Yoko Tawada, and it's translated from the Japanese by Margaret Mitsutani. I'm really excited about this book. This is a kind of sci-fi dystopian book. It's set in a world where Japan doesn't exist anymore and its people have been scattered all over the earth, as the title indicates. It's described as a mind-expanding, cheerfully dystopian new novel, so I'm quite curious about that. What got me really excited is that from the summary there seems to be conversation about language and like a fake or newly made language mixing Japanese and Scandinavian language, which I'm interested in, like both of those. Like I do speak Swedish and a little bit of Japanese. I just love languages, and every conversation about language in fiction is gonna get me excited. For the second prompt, a book that feels timeless, I've decided to read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Vuong. So this book is a letter from a son to his mother who cannot read. I've heard amazing things about this. Apparently the prose is very lyrical, very poetic, and that's why I decided to read this for the prompt about a book that feels timeless. It sounds to me like this beautiful poetic writing could feel very timeless. I think there is this kind of quality with poetry, and so I'm excited to dive in. For the underrated book, I've decided to read One Part Woman. So this is from Perumal Murugan, who is a Tamil author, and it's translated from the Tamil from Anirudhan Vasudevan. This is a story of a couple from South India who is having trouble conceiving and having a child. From what I've seen, this is a very famous book in India. Like it was a bestseller. I think it sold over 100,000 copies. But for some reason, I haven't seen anyone on BookTube talk about this book. And I found it in a bookshop when I was traveling in Poland. I think it was like a tiny bookshop specialized in Asian literature. So I was quite excited to see that bookshop, and I got this book from it. Nice memory from my trip in Poland. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone speak about it, and I'm quite surprised because it's such a famous book in India, apparently such a successful book in its country of origin, and it's not talked about in the Western side of BookTube. Of all the books that I considered for this challenge, this is the one that had the fewest reviews, so definitely underrated, and I'm excited to read it. For this same prompt about an underrated book, I might get to Violent Phenomena. So this is gonna be a bonus book. Like my primary book is gonna be One Part Woman, but if I manage to get to this one as well, that's gonna be a win. And again, this is a book that has very few ratings on Storygraph. I've put it as a bonus book because it's a collection of essays from various authors on the topic of translation. I used to work as a translator. I love languages, I love translation, I'm fascinated by it, so I'm very interested in reading this. A few authors from this collection of essays are Asian, but not all of them, which is why I'm only counting it as a bonus and not as my primary read for this prompt. For the debut book, I've decided to read Shanghai Immortals by A.Y. Chao. Honestly, I barely know anything about this book. I just know that it's an adult romantic fantasy from the Jay's age in Shanghai. That sounds pretty exciting, and that's all I need to know. I wanted to read this one because I'm gonna attend a writers' festival in August. This author is going to attend it. I have a few workshops booked with her, so I thought it would be really nice to have read her book first, and so that's what I'm going to do during May. For the last prompt, which is read a book with a character, story or world that represents what you would want in your next life, I couldn't pick only one, so I have 3 books in there, and they're all from the same country, which is going to be Korea, so only one would count for the challenge. The first one I've picked is I'll Be the One by Lyla. It's the story of Sky, who's a young Korean girl who really wants to be a K-pop star, but she's been told that she shouldn't pursue that dream because she's too fat for it, basically. And this is a YA, LGBTQIA+ romance novel. I'm quite excited, and so I picked this one because Sky seems to be a character that's very determined, who really believes in herself despite what others tell her, and full of positivity, so it's definitely something I would want to bring into my next life. The next book I've selected for this prompt is Gone, A Girl, a Violin, a Life Unstrung by Min Kim. So this one is a memoir from Min Kim, who is like a virtuoso violinist, and this is a story of her precious violin being stolen and how she overcome that loss. I picked this one because I'm getting really into music and realizing how much music brings joy to me, so it's something that I would want to bring into my next life as well, and I'm really interested in reading more about this topic. Finally, the third book I've selected for this prompt is Yoko by Mary Choi. It's the story of two sisters that used to be close but are now kind of estranged, but one of them gets sick and needs help from her sister, and that's kind of their reconnecting there and how things turn out. I have a sister myself. I love sisterly sisters. Like, I love to read about relationship between sisters in books, so I've been excited about this book for a long time. It's been sitting on my TBR for forever and now feels like the perfect excuse to finally get to it. I've picked this one for this prompt because in a future life I hope I would still have a sister. And because I can't stop myself, I will try to get to 2 additional books. Those are not my priority because, like, for the challenge I will try to read books that match the prompts, but I'm like, while I'm at it, I would also like to read The Art of Prophecy from Wesley Chu. This would represent Taiwan. This is also like an adult fantasy, and it's a book I got from my trip to Zaragoza in Spain that I vlogged a little bit earlier on the channel. I'm really excited about it. I couldn't really fit it into the prompts, so it's gonna be a bonus book. And I've also would like to read If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha, which is a book about beauty standards in Korea as well. I already have a bunch of books from Korea, which is why I didn't include it in the prompts, but if I get to it, it's also a book that's been on my TBR for forever, so I'm hoping to get to it. Like, I think I'm being way too ambitious with this challenge. I can't help it. I'm so excited, and there's so many books from Asian authors that I've been wanting to get to, so I will try to get through as many as I can. Now moving on to some recommendations. First off is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This is a contemporary novel. I think that's also a debut, which would work really well with one of the prompts. This is the story of Geeta, whose husband has disappeared, and the rest of the village thinks she's murdered her husband. They're kind of scared of her and leaving her alone, which she's very happy about. But things change one day when one of the other women in the village asks her to help with getting rid of her own husband. It's a very funny book. The author is very witty and has some dark humor that I quite enjoy, but it's also touching on quite serious topics, notably the condition of women in rural India. If you're looking for a book from India or a debut novel, I would recommend The Bandit Queens. Next, I would recommend Playing Games from Uma Qureshi. She's a British writer from Pakistani descent. She's published other books as well, but I think this one is her debut novel. This is the story of 2 sisters, Hannah and Mira. Hannah seems to have the perfect life, while Mira is the younger sibling who seems to be struggling to find her way. She wants to be a playwright and is struggling with her writing. One day she hears a conversation between Hannah and her husband that she's not supposed to hear, and that sparks inspiration in her writing. And so this book is about their relationship and where we can draw inspiration from, what is ours to tell. I thought it was extremely well done. Like, the relationship, the dynamics between the characters, especially the 2 sisters, was done masterfully, and I really adored this book. I would highly recommend. Next, I want to recommend The Center. This is from Ayesha Manazi Siddiqui, which I think would also count for a reading from Pakistan. This book is the story of Anissa, who is doing some translation. She makes Bollywood movie subtitles, and she's not very satisfied with this kind of work. She wants to be a translator of great works of fiction, so she's very frustrated in her work. She meets this guy, Adam, and they become a couple. And he's very good with languages. She's quite impressed with his talent, but what is the straw that breaks the camel's back is that one day when he's about to meet her parents, he suddenly starts speaking perfect Urdu, and she finds that very upsetting, and he ends up revealing that he has a secret. He learned the language from the center, which is a place where you can pay a huge amount of money and become perfectly fluent in a new language in just, I think, a couple of weeks or something. And so Anissa is very intrigued by that and she decides to go to the center, but obviously things are not as they seem, and some ominous things start to happen. As I said, I love books about languages and translation. I thought this was really well done. It's gripping, even though I guess some of the twists and turns, I thought it was very unsettling and a bit disturbing, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Speaking of unsettling, I would recommend Leave the World Behind by Ruman Alam. This is the story of a typical American family. They're going on a vacation in an Airbnb in a fancy house, and on the first night there is a couple, a black couple, knocking at the door asking if they can come in and stay because something terrible has happened in New York City where they are from. It's been adapted into a movie on Netflix. I preferred the book. It's again like very disturbing, very unsettling. It talks about our dependence on technology and what happens when we don't have access to that anymore. Next, this is Baby G from Avada Visar. It's a book I've read probably 15 years ago, so I have a very vague memory and I'm probably due for a reread. From what I remember, it's a coming of age story from a young Indian girl whose name is Baby G, and she's kind of a Lolita a little bit. She's very into exploring her senses, she loves to learn. It's her story evolving in the Indian society at a time of political unrest. This is the French translation, so I'd be curious to read the original in English. Next, I have a book translated from Japanese, so this is the French version because I read it in French again many years ago. The English title is The Guest Cat, and this is by Hiraide Takashi. It's a tiny book. Hiraide Takashi is initially a poet, and this is his first novel. It's just a story of a couple moving into a new house, and there is this cat that lives in the garden and the relationship that they build with the cat. I remember it being very poetic, very charming, just like a quiet, lovely novel. So if you want something quick to read but still very lovely, very emotional, I would recommend this one. Next, I would like to recommend The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. It's the story of two twins, Rahel and Esther, during political unrest in the south of India. I think it's set in Kerala, and basically it's a book talking about castes and the injustices of that system in India. It's a book I read during my South Indian studies, and I remember the teacher saying that this is the Indo-English novel. So it's kind of a classic in itself. It's a bit of a difficult book, so I would recommend maybe checking the trigger warnings on this. But I think it's, if you're curious about the Indian context and the caste system and things like that, that would be a very good read and an important one as well. Alright, that's it for today. I really hope you'll be joining the Asian Readathon with me this year. And if you do, please use the hashtag asianreadathon so that we can find you and your content and we can follow each other along. I hope you find some good recommendations and books that you're excited to read, new authors, new stories, and again, expanding your bookish horizons. Let me know in the comments below if you're planning to join the Readathon, and if so, which books are you planning to read? Which one are you the most excited about? As always, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.